All right.
Better than dealing with TPS.
So let's bring the 10 for 10 series to a close, guys. And Cage, when we left National, we had this motto. It's like jobs not finished, right? And we sensed that there was this enthusiasm at National, and there was a lot of people that couldn't be there. There was a lot of people that were there, but there was a lot of people that weren't. And we wanted to carry that on. And honestly, got to give you guys a shout out there. All the success that we've had record listener numbers. It's all of you guys out there that are listening and sharing. And honestly, without that, I don't think we would be able to get the two guests that we have sitting in front of us today, which is truly, truly a blessing. And I'm excited for these next 30 minutes to have a great, great conversation with them. So now to introduce our guests. So it's not going to be kind of a history of Nat Turner and PSA because we did that. We've had Nat on the show. Today, we're going to be talking about PSA, the National, and PSA moving forward and some of the amazing content they're creating. So without further ado, Mr. Steve Sloan, Mr. Nat Turner, welcome to the show, guys. It's amazing to have you.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to try not to bore Nat this time. Last time we had Nat on, he was sorting his cards. I was like, I got to come up with better questions. This guy's setting up his cards are great. He's doing it again.
So we have exactly 30 minutes. So I want to kick it right off the bat. There was a rumor going around National. I want to hear if this is true, and this might be for you, Steve. PSA getting into grading memorabilia. Is that going to be the case? Because there was some beautiful, beautiful memorabilia, right? There was a lot of cards, but I remember seeing like a Bill Russell 1958 MVP trophy, game-worn jerseys, baseball signed by just about everyone at bats. Is there any truth to that rumor that PSA will be grading memorabilia at some point in the future?
Well, it depends on which types of memorabilia. We currently do grade certain types, including game-used bats. We have agreement with John Tobby, who's the foremost expert, Vince Malta, foremost experts in that particular field. Same thing with autographs and grading autographs. We do that with Kevin Keating and our expert autograph staff. The gloves are included in Tobby's as well. We have in the past done rings, trophies, and awards through an expert named TJK. We actually don't do that any longer, but TJ is still a great resource for that. I would say on the game use side, that is an area we've looked at for sure. There's some stellar experts out there that are doing their thing. I think it's just a matter of how it fits with PSA. At the time, obviously most of our focus is currently on the trading card backlog. But as we continue to grow, and Nat's done a great job bringing in some people on the corporate development side who can help us with that, we certainly could look at game use jerseys as an example.
Let me throw one out there, Andrew, because it's easy. I want to let these guys talk. You both can answer this, right? And you're going to come at it different ways because, Steve, you've been to the National many times before wearing a PSA shirt, working the PSA booth. Nat, I think this is your first time behind the bar, like serving drinks, at PSA, right?
What's cool about Nat, though, he came in front of the bar and shook hands.
Exactly. I was going to get there. But yeah, so you guys, I mean, Steve, you could take it from a comparison to years past, how crazy was it? Was it busy, or you name it? And that kind of like any reaction you had to, the National, the way people kind of, approach the booth, the way people approach PSA at the National, from this side of it now.
Was that for me or Steve?
Both of you guys. I want to hear both. Go for it, You're both gonna have different answers.
Yeah. I had a blast. I mean, I've been to the National a bunch as a collector. I was actually there as a collector as well as representing PSA and Collectors Universe. But on Tuesday and Wednesday, I spent about an hour or two just walking around, just doing my own personal collecting thing. But as far as being behind the booth, I mean, it was really fun. I mean, the best part was meeting people face to face that, a lot of them I've met before, but I hadn't seen in 2, 3, 4 years. And then a lot of people are new to the hobby or were longtime customers of PSA that I never interacted with, but I knew of, like, frankly, legendary collectors that, I got to shake their hand and see some of the cool things they were carrying around. Honestly, just walking the line and like talking to some people, because I love cards. So I was like, hey, like, what do you got? Like, can I just see what you're about to submit? And I saw some really cool stuff that frankly, like I knew existed, but like I had never seen. And it showed up at the National, and thankfully it was submitted to PSA, which was even cooler to kind of see those cards go through the grading process. yeah, honestly, it was awesome. I had a blast, but I know Steve was probably more stressed than I was. Yeah, Steve actually had to work harder than I did. I got to like play around with cards.
And Nat was people didn't see it, but behind the scenes, Nat's in the back inputting orders. I mean, he was really going at every level, which was cool. Customer ambassador that really helped us bring in even more business. Nat, there's openings on the sales team if you need anything. All right. From my side, I mean, Nat nailed it. I was very stressed going into the show just because this is a big occurrence for PSA every time a national takes place. Our presence at the show is important, and I think for people new to the hobby, understanding how the kind of economics of the show floor take place, like our presence there is very important from the standpoint of us being there to provide our services so additional trade can happen at the show. And so cards that are submitted at the show typically will then get exchanged or traded, bought, sold, that sort of thing. So it's important that we're there. Our nervousness came really from the fact that we knew that there would be a great deal of demand. So how could we position ourselves for success? One thing that was kind of an unsung hero for us was the fact that all of our submissions were done through our online submission center. In the past, believe it or not, even as recently as 2019, we're still accepting paper forms for cards. And being able to have the ability to kind of foresee the future as to what was coming through the online submission center really helped us be prepared. And as a result, we had a really successful show.
There was this cool story circulating around. It was this guy, his name's Mikey, right? And I think it was like 4 months ago, like his local show up in I think it was like Northeast. I don't exactly know where, but he picked up a gold 2015. Show. It was a church show. Yeah. So he picked up a gold Kobe Bryant 2015, Kobe's last season. And there was some speculation. So he graded it right there on the site. Did the deal ever go down, Matt? Did you ever get that card?
No. I think I remember. Well, first of all, I was in the grading room when the card came through the graders, because one of the graders knows that I love Kobe cards. And he's like, check this out. And, I walked over to his desk and was like, oogling at it. But no, I didn't end up getting the card. So I don't know who. I'm assuming he still has it.
I'm going to take a pause here, okay? Because I have to do it, because it wouldn't be an episode of ours if I didn't. But I may have in my brain, when I heard a collector of Nat's stature is going to be in the PSA booth while stuff is being collected and graded, I may have said to myself, could this happen? A Kobe card that he wants comes in, and it's a 10, right? It's a 10. But you know what? Because Nat's there, they're going to slab it a 9, and Nat can pick it up a little cheaper. And then it can get resubmitted, and he can have his 10 and get it because he's behind the scenes. And here you go, guys. Think about it.
Yeah, but card porn would see the serial number, and then he would blast it all over Instagram.
Steve Sloan is actually card porn. But here it is. The guy, he wants the card, but it's a 10. And you know what? The guy wanted a price for it. Nat says, I can't pay for it. I mean, that's a little too much. The price is a little too steep. So here you go, right here, behind the scenes. Kobe came through. Nat wanted it. He was drooling. I see him. He's drooling right now a little bit. It was this awesome gold Kobe card. And you know what? It slips through his hands because this is not what this is about, right? This is not, the card's going to get graded. Nat's not going to say, no, knock that one down a little bit. Let's make that a 9. I'll make sure I note the certificate number. So anybody out there who might be thinking that, maybe stop, because that's a little silly. So anyway, I just had to do an aside because that's the first thing that my brain went to as a hobby cynic, I guess.
So I'm an optimist, I guess, by nature. This is how the dynamic works. I thought it was cool that I saw how busy you were, Nat, and you were always moving, you guys had so much to do. There was a line around the corner. People wanted to see you. And the first thing you did, maybe not the first thing, but the first public thing that you did when you went back to PSA, you understood that we live in a content age. And you put together this 100 best cards submitted at PSA, which probably took a ton of time. And it's so atypical to what normal grading companies, legacy grading companies would have done. Curious, why did you want to do that? Why did you go that route?
I mean, look, as a collector, like I said, I mean, I was in heaven seeing some of these cards get submitted, and personally felt it was like a responsibility to allow people to see what I was seeing. It was true entertainment as a collector. I mean, every 5-6 minutes, a card was on the booth out there, and I was walking by, and I'm like, like the Atom Bomb 1 of 1. I saw cards like there were multiple 1 of 1 LeBron rookies that came through. By the way, I didn't even put these in the list, but we had reholders.
I'm gonna pull these up as you're talking about them. So here's the 1 of 1.
We had some reholders come in, cards that I like that were not on the list. Every card here was graded for the first time by PSA. So they have the serial number. You'll see the certificate number is 6341. But I saw some crazy stuff. But the point is as a collector, I'm like, I feel like I have to let people see what I was seeing as a form of collecting, entertainment. Like that mantle, for example, the 53. I was in the room when that came in, and our head grader who was there for vintage was like, "You're not going to believe what I just saw." And I wasn't actually in the room at the second he graded. I came in maybe 20 minutes. He had set it aside, and he was like, "You're not going to believe this is the nicest 53 mantle we've seen in years." And like that's a huge card by itself, and it got an 8.5, which is a monster grade, for that card. And like that's just so I don't know. Personally, I just think it's super cool to see something like that. And had we not gone through and published it, I don't know if that card transacted or not at the show. To Steve's point, a lot of these cards did transact at the show, I presume. But that card may never have surfaced again. And I just think it's cool to be able to see what happened. So that was all. It took a long time. It took me 7 hours to go through the folder.
Yeah, Nat, I think there's going to have to be like a monthly series here where you do your monthly favorites and picks. So.
Are you guys at PSA leaning into more content moving forward? I guess from like a business standpoint, are you seeing that as something that the audience, I guess, has asked for in 2020, 2021, a little more transparency?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think a lot of people don't understand that we have operated on a pretty shoestring marketing / content side for a number of years. We're really trying to reinvest in that area. You look around the landscape of the hobby, there's so much great content on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, podcasts. I mean, it's great to see so many people converging and sharing opinions on a daily, weekly basis. We want to be part of that conversation. Traditionally, we have been a very small part of the conversation, typically in things like print and through series on our website. We want to be more in the podcast world, in the video production world. So we're looking for talent. Honestly, there's a number of open job recs on our website currently. If you're looking for a role in the hobby, I encourage you to check it out, psacard.com/careers, and look what you can contribute to PSA. I mean, we look at what we just did with the top 100 list. I mean, that literally happens on a daily basis here at the office in terms of the great cards that flow through, and there's a lot of opportunity to pull back the veil, show exactly what we're grading, explain some of our processes, explain our growth. And so, yeah, it is certainly something we're investing in.
I mean, think of that, right? You just said you have museum quality assets right there. And if you didn't do that quick post, no one would see them. They were brought in by a collector, they're given to you, and okay, well, that's it. We'll give it back. Maybe it transacts, maybe it doesn't. But like that mantle, that's 70 years old, that card, right? I'm approaching 70 years old. And has it ever been graded? Who knows? Maybe it's in private collection. You don't know the backstory. Now I want to find out. Now I want to see where it's going to come up for sale, or if someone's just going to, hang on to it in their collection. And you juxtapose that against a 1 of 1 Atom Bomb, which is as modern as it gets here, Sapphire, you know what I mean? And just, I mean, it's crazy just to see the vast expanse of different cool things that you guys get to see. And it's great that you're sharing them, because otherwise it's happening in the dark.
Can we, I want to shift gears and provide some optimism, some enthusiasm for the people listening. Here we are, August 2021 moving forward. Before we even do that, I want to ask you guys. You guys are some of the smartest kind of econ market behavior. You understand how markets work. What makes for a successful hobby, right? Like we always talk about the hobby, the market's unsustainable, the prices are too high, that this company has a backlog, all this stuff. What is a sustainable hobby? What does that even look like? I know that's kind of a vague question, but if we figure and define that, maybe we could talk about how we can move forward to get to that goal.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Steve. I mean, in my opinion, the health, I look back, let's see, 15, 20 years ago when, it was a lot of dealer to dealer transactions. It's a very kind of like small circle. The hobby wasn't super healthy. You didn't have a lot of like new young people coming in. And that kind of by definition, is lack of liquidity. Like, it's very risky. If some dealer decides not to get, another PSA 10 Jordan rookie, the price of that card could plummet. Now the health is very dependent upon the circle growing, by having more collectors come in who are interested in the same cards. That's if you look at the health as far as like prices, that's certainly true. But if you look at it just in terms of, access, liquidity, you need these things flowing around back and forth between people. And anyway, growing the pie, basically growing the number of collectors, which, by the way, at the National for me, I went the last few years as well. Not last year, obviously, it was canceled, but it just was so different. The number of young folks there, the number of people in general, like it felt like 2 or 3 times as big, as 19.
Well, your line, definitely the line at your place was, only Whatnot might have had a similar line, but they were giving away free ice cream. So, that's, it's hard to compete with that, especially when you look like me.
Yeah.
Bomb pop goes a long way.
And to me, I would say trust and like, you got to trust the prices you're seeing. You got to trust that the auctions are being conducted fairly. You got to trust the grading process, all those things. eBay was very helpful with, reputation and feedback back in the day. That was a huge innovation for card collecting. But we need to be even better now as a hobby. And thankfully, there's some really good auction houses that are doing a good job on the harder to access, higher price stuff. Before you'd have to kind of broker private deals. I think that's important, and there's been a lot of innovation there. But that's what I'd say. I don't know if Steve has anything to add.
Yeah, I'd boil it down to structure and transparency. For me, the structure side is just you want to be able to pull out your phone and be able to access either a community of people who know what the answer to a question or have similar interests and feelings about as you do about a particular card, or a website or some sort of piece of information that can give you more assurance as to what you're looking at, the security of your transaction. And so there's a lot of converging, really smart and emerging technology and innovative companies that are coming into the space. And to me, that gives me great optimism for this hobby, because you look at any asset class, if there's structure around it, then it's going to grow and more people are going to participate. So that's one thing. And the other flip side is just transparency. People getting on screens like this, talking face to face, having an understanding who the person is you're dealing with. Social media is a critical component of that. So whether you're a breaker, whether you're an auction house, people who present themselves and put themselves out there, that's how you develop community, and that's how you in turn develop growth. So the more things are tied to the phone, in my opinion, the more this is just going to continue to go.
In terms of transparency, so we have this one corner of the hobby that's actually now regulated, right? And it's fractional. And I'm curious, what do you guys think of fractional? We had Collectible there, but Rally and Otis are also 2 great companies who do fractional ownership of memorabilia, NFTs, and CryptoPunks and cars. Does fractional help the market?
Steve, you want to?
I think so. I'm a fan of it because it democratizes collectibles. And if you can't afford that 1953 Bowman and 8.5, maybe you have a shot of owning a share of it. The main thing is how secure it is, and the assurance that you have a governing body looking over it is a critical component, I think, of the long-term success of it. That's happening in many instances. So for me, I love it. I love the fact that there's big prices and that people are pushing cards in the mainstream through some of that activity. So I got nothing but positive outlooks on it. I just want it to remain a secure transaction for the people participating.
Besides maybe a 70-year-old Mantle 8.5 coming across the table, anything surprise you guys about the National? Anything sneak up on you? Anything like, wow, I wasn't expecting that? For me, it was just the fact that there were like 12-year-olds walking around showing me eBay comps. That was pretty nuts.
Well, we had a few kids. We had a bunch of kids in line. We brought one kid. Actually, the Fortnite card that's in the top 100 was this particular kid's card, and he was like clutching the card. And like, I don't think his dad was a collector, and we actually brought him and like gave him a little tour and stuff, and made sure the card got entered, in time and everything. But Yeah, for me, it was actually there weren't as many. Well, actually, there were more soccer cards than I expected. Honestly, like I would look through the bins, as they were being submitted, like, I mean, it felt like it was 25-30% of the submissions. I don't know if that's true. It probably was a lot lower, but it just it was a very noticeable. Not surprising either was there was not as many TCG like Pokemon and cards because the show is largely a sports show, I would say. We see a ton of that in the office at PSA, by the way, and growing. But at the national, it wasn't as much, other than when like Aoki and some of those guys who really collect that stuff personally dropped off things just because they were higher value. But I don't know those are. And then the number of kids in line was super cool. It's like submitting the cards themselves with their parents. But I don't know what Steve thought.
Yeah, just the diversity of the crowds and on the cards submitted. I mean, typically, go to the national years past, even 5 years ago, it's a bunch of cases of vintage baseball cards, which is very core component of the hobby. But this year, I mean, completely different with the just variety of types of cards, not only on the floor being submitted. It's a sports show, but I did see some non-sports cards, which was nice to see, more than I'd ever seen in the past, even though it's still a very small fraction to Nat's point. We see much more here at the office, but overall, just really encouraged to see so many kids, so many, frankly, just more diverse crowd overall from what we've seen in the past. So that shows me that more people are getting engaged through social and other ways to get into the hobby, which is great to see.
One thing I'll add, we had someone asked on Twitter, like, could you also make a top 100 list of cards that should not have been submitted? We did have some folks, and it's something Steve and I will probably talk about in the future, of like providing guidance at the booth to be like, like maybe, there's some people kind of walked in that maybe weren't as educated on the grading process, and a guy submitted like a 1991 Fleer Jordan, which, maybe we're not going to be the one to say you shouldn't get a card graded, but that's certainly at the service levels and the grade it got probably wasn't worth it at all. But again, he wanted it graded. And so there were some, I would say, kind of more newer customers that I think we need to help, educate on, what they expect from the process. But that was one other thing to add.
Some people just want their card in a slab though, too. It's not even sometimes about the grade, right?
Yeah, look, we're not going to turn away a card by any means, but we probably could do a little bit more education, up front for brand new customers on,
Something I learned from my co-host, and I'm really lucky here because the guy's like, he's a jokester, but he knows his stuff, and he's been in the hobby for 3 decades at least, and he talks a lot about coloring up, and like you listen to interviews of Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, Gary, so many entrepreneurs across the board. They have their roots in collecting cards because like you could kind of color up, you understand like fundamental finance and basics and things like that. And 2 groups of people last year had a lot of success of that, right? There's people that could send just about any card to PSA, have it slabbed, resell it when they get it back and make money, and group dealers. And so 2020 was good to group dealers and let's call them card flippers. It's gotten a lot harder in 2021. But they were still there. A lot of them were still at the national. So I don't know if Steve wants to take this than Nat or Nat than Steve, but like, what would you say to those groups of guys, right? They've tried to color up, they try to do things the right way, but it might be a little bit more challenging. That doesn't mean that the game is different. It just changed a little. What would you say to those groups of people?
You want to take that one, Nat?
Nat says collect DMGs instead.
Yeah.
Don't collect things. No.
I mean, they play a hugely critical role. Steve and I met with a bunch, at the show, the dealers, the group submitters, and I'm a big customer actually of a bunch of them for my sets, that I'm doing. I personally, and we talked about this, we're probably just as disappointed as they are that, it doesn't make sense right now to send a bunch of set filler cards to us to get graded at current open service levels. And that makes being a group submitter hard because, a lot of what those guys are doing are aggregating, lower end cards to send in. And we can't really help them right now on those things. But I'll tell you, with our backlog, we are making a ton of progress, and we're sending back cards to those very dealers with regularity. And, so they have supply, they have inventory that's coming back to them every week that they can then, keep their business going in the market while, they're not necessarily submitting new cards, but again, they were part of the reason we have a huge backlog. They have a ton of stuff that's due to come back to them. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that covers it really well. I mean, I think one thing we can do for them is just provide that consistent flow of product coming back, because that keeps the pump primed. And so big group submitters like PC Sports Cards and others, and they have a ton of stuff here already in the building, and just getting it back to their customers is part of what we obviously can deliver on. Our ability to process the lower end bulk stuff is actually quite good. We have the ability to push out quite a good number of low end orders. So that does certainly help get at least the product back into the marketplace. In terms of getting new submissions in, it's going to be a while, frankly. And that was one of the top questions I got. When am I going to be able to submit cards at $20 again or lower? And it's not going to be 2021. I can tell you for sure that. Unfortunately, just given the backlog at where it is today, we have to focus on that. We've made our bed with this huge influx of submissions, and we have to, do everything we can to get those back to the people who have submitted them. So looking towards 2022 and more, optionality within our online submission center. Maybe it's targeted to certain types of cards that we can accept at an early basis. For example, vintage, because of how important that is to the set building community. That might be an option that we explore, where we say, okay, we're going to bring back vintage low end first before we get to other categories like ultra modern or modern. So
we didn't even ask him. You tell he's been asked this question so many times. Everybody wants to know. He just voluntarily answered his own question. I love it.
I'm coming from straight off the national. I answered that question probably 25 times. So
we're right here, right along our end point, guys. First off, I want to say thank you for jumping on. This is the finale, our 10 for 10 series. No one better to end it, to cap it all for us. Steve, I've met Nat before, but I saw in your profile picture you're a baseball player. Did you catch the Field of Dreams game last night?
I did. That was a great ending.
Not for me. Not for Yankee fans.
Are you a Yankee fan? I'm sorry. Yeah. That's like, I think the main thing I saw on social media afterwards was like, let's do this more often, right? And I think just as a baseball fan, like, it needs every shot in the arm it can get from a publicity and positive marketing standpoint. So one of my favorite comments is like, okay, when's the Sandlot game going to come? So like that's for me. It's like, okay, let's try something different with different venues and things like that. So yeah, it was a great marketing thing for
Steve says try something different, but would you try the hot dog in the apple pie?
Yeah,
they were you take that. How about your Nat? Nat looked in shape in the picture. Would you have a hot dog with the apple pie?
I'm not an apple pie guy, but I'll eat a hot dog.
Did you have what's that place in Chicago that everyone loves, like their hot dogs cage?
Why don't you try it again? Because you've said it 14 times in 14 different ways.
But
what do you
forgot, man. I don't have a photogenic memory.
It was like Bertoli's. He's go Bertoli's Portillo's. He's like, never 14
been.
different.
Never been.
I'm blanking on it. We had some delivered to the booth for the staff.
We did.
I can't even remember the name. But yeah.
Guys, I like to be punctual. Cage taught me that. Right here we are, right against their deadline. Thank you so much, Nat, Steve. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you for being so generous with your time, your information. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.